His Majesty is justice. Weakness is a sin. These words are to Neia a revelation, a prayer, and a grim reminder. And while they seem random, illogical, or perhaps even cruel to the uninitiated, there's a lot of wisdom behind those words. But before we dive into the philosophical background of them, I want to welcome you to yet another Overlord lore video, and also say thanks to my Patreons for supporting this channel. And in order to dive into this surprisingly intricate and complex topic, we have to shed some light on Neia and her background. Neia Baraja was a squire in the Paladin Order of the Holy Kingdom. Inspired by her mother, she pursued the same path as her. While she was naturally talented with bows and ranged combat, she still primarily trained to become better with her sword, and if her training would have continued, Neia would likely also have tried to learn magic spells, for example under Divine Flag, an area of effect spell used to stabilize morale or even inspire large concentrations of troops. Basically, Neia attempted to do what paladins are supposed to do. During the invasion of Yaldabaoth's demons and the United Beastmen tribes, Neia had lost her father at the wall, and her mother died as well during the defense of the Holy Kingdom. After suffering a nearly total defeat, Neia used her keen eyes and her talents as a scout to find an escape route out of the Holy Kingdom, so that the remnants of the army could gather strength, reorganize, and make a plea for help. During this time, Neia suffered on a Remedios Custodio, and Neia witnessed her belief system fail, time and time again. Neia's first belief system was likely inspired by her upbringing and her admiration for her mother and the Paladin Order. Like Remedios, albeit to a lesser extent, Neia believed in good and evil, good being what benefits people, and evil being all the things that hurt them. As mentioned, this belief taken to the most extreme point of view would be embodied by Remedios, who would see the world as truly divided between good and evil. And of course, as a paladin, one had to do good things in order to combat the evil ones. So Neia metaphorically suffered under the embodiment of her current belief system, and she watched Remedios fail, time and time again. And it was because of this very belief system. For example, during the liberation of one of Yaldabaoth's happy farms, where prisoners were skinned alive, a demi-human leader had taken a few kids hostage and threatened to kill them if Remedios didn't stop the attack. So she did. As a result, the demi-humans had time to strengthen their defense, making greater sacrifices, suffering, and loss of life necessary to liberate the people of the Holy Kingdom, and perhaps even prevent a liberation at all. Ein Solgaun, emotionally detached and pragmatic, casted Fireball onto the tower where the demi-human stood with his hostages, and killed all of them. As a result of this action, the Liberation Army was free to attack again, and the demi-humans, being shown how ineffective their hostages truly are, ignored the prisoners and fully focused on the fight. So with the sacrifice of a few lives, Eins saved many more. Also in a cruel twist of fate, if it hadn't been for Ein Solgaun, the Liberation Army would still have been boned. Remedios, however, was unable to adapt to this, choosing to cling to her moral high ground in the face of her insufficiency and defeat. She, during the liberation of an entire city, was unable to ignore the suffering of a few hostages to end the suffering of the many people within the city. So once again, Eins had to step in and save the day. From these and other key impressions, Neia formed or rather acknowledged the concept of weakness and the concept of strength. And while we use terms like weakness and strength frequently, we still need to define them here, because in order to understand weakness, we have to understand strength, and vice versa. In Neia's mind, a strong person is an individual who can achieve her goals, if necessary against the resistance of others. Therefore, weakness would be defined as the inability to act in one's own interest, or even the inability to act at all. While strength is the ability to pursue one's path, weakness is the inability to prevent others from tampering with it. This is the difference between Eins and Remedios. This concept of weakness also entails that even the greatest dreams and the gift of having the means to pursue them are worth nothing if one lacks the will necessary to act on them. Therefore, while strength is valuable and can be used to the benefit of others, true strength can't be granted, gifted, or bestowed to anybody. They must earn it for themselves. Remedios, despite having the strength to liberate the camp and the city, was unable to do so because of her weakness stemming from her black and white belief system. And Neia, who was naturally gifted with bows, and despite receiving a magnificent one from Einzelgaun himself, still dedicated the vast majority of her training to hone her skill with her sword. This made her weak, a fact she acknowledged during the assault of the demi-human army, where her arm began to hurt due to her lack of training and muscular development. Despite all of her natural aptitude and being granted the greatest bow in the Holy Kingdom, Neia still was defeated by her enemies. But after her resurrection at the hand of Einzelgaun, Neia abandoned her sword as her primary weapon and trained with the bow Eins bestowed upon her. So right then and there, Neia's core awakening happened. After Eins resurrected her, she understood her former actions as weakness and therefore began to act from a point of strength by choosing a path that would increase her combat ability the most, training herself and others in ranged combat with bows. And therefore, Neia's choice after her resurrection, not the resurrection alone, marked a change in her character. From weakness to strength, Neia's rebirth was just an opportunity to adapt to the reality of her situation. And with all of this in mind, Neia had experienced yet another revelation. To Neia, a strong person using his strength to protect the weak and guide them to strength of their own, to help them develop, would be just. This is why Neia came to the realization of justice shortly after her resurrection. Eins was using his strength for the benefit of Neia. This, especially from Neia's perspective, was an act of justice. Neither keeping people in a state of weakness in order to keep them reliant on the external strength you provide, nor mistreating them or denying them their own path to strength, would be just. This is also the reason why in Neia's mind, Yaldabaoth is strong, but not just. In contrast to Neia developing strength, Remedios had shown a great deal of weakness. Weakness is inability, and therefore also stands in the way of justice, since no matter how moral a person is, she can't do anything just, if she lacks the means to do so. Remedios and her inability to adopt her moral code to the battlefield situation, and therefore willingly remaining unable to yield results in the face of her people's need, was weakness, since her inability to neglect the life of the hostages prevented the Liberation Army from taking the city, and thereby from protecting the people from harm, until they could heal from their wounds and defend themselves. Remedios' weakness prevented justice. And that's why to Neia, weakness is a sin. Now, if you have ever played KOTOR 2, all of this might sound strangely familiar to you, since it is a very similar concept to the lesson of strength given by Kreia. But instead of teaching one to just build and only rely upon your own strength, and to turn away from power that isn't yours, in Overlord, the impact of external power as a way to build power on one's own is given a moral connotation, that of justice. And at the end of Neia's journey to strength, Eins offered to resurrect Neia's family in a grand ritual, but Neia turned this offering of external strength down, which runs parallel to the exile, refusing the strength of Hanhar. Curiously enough, not only is Neia's name oddly similar to Kreia, but the relationship between Kreia and the exile kind of mirrors that of Einzelgaun and Neia. Eins being Kreia and Neia being the exile in this case. And in the next video we will see why Einzelgaun is indeed justice. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Al Capone, Andy, Angel of Death, Bad Guy E, Boyzilla, Diabetic Centaur, Dystopia, Felice Catus, Gigafight, Hector Moreno, Hoss, Jason, Chromius, Large Z, Lord Touch Me, Lord Ulbert Elaine Oddle, Marcos, Mr. Shoes, Menno 13, Mirtis, Primus 11, Sasuga 1 Summer, Sebastian, Surge, Sparkly Unicorn, and Vash Hawkeye. Thanks guys. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, over and out.